We're reading this morning from Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, and then 27 to 32. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up onto the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, "You have heard what it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Jenny. Let us pray together. Lord, that is, on the face of it, a hard word. May your Spirit make it clear that we may be encouraged in faith, hope, and love for your name's sake. Amen. This is a passage which is part of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus has gathered his disciples together. He's gone to this remote place to teach, and there are thousands of people gathering with him. But there are some pictures, I nearly used one, but there are some pictures of Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he stood there, and there are 5,000 odd people and plus around him, and they're all paying attention. Now, this may seem like heresy, but in Monty Python's The Life of Brian, there's the scene of Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount, and they're at the right at the back. Blessed are the cheesemakers. And so, well, obviously, not just manufacturers of cheese, but any dietary products. The likelihood of Jesus proclaiming a message to 5,000 plus people without a PA system, I know he's God, but it's nonsense. And the text actually draws that out because he says, Jesus saw, in verse 1, Jesus saw the crowds. He went up onto the mountainside. He sat down. There's so many pictures of Jesus standing there proclaiming the great sermon. It's not actually a sermon on the mount. It's a Bible study on the mount. And he's gathered his disciples around him. He sat down, his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He is not teaching, he's not proclaiming to the crowd. Most of the crowd would not have heard a thing. Most of the crowd were there because Jesus has been doing miracles. He's been healing people. If you go back into the end of chapter 4, news has spread around because he's been curing people who've been suffering various different diseases. So those in severe pain, those possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed. And so there's people coming from all over. His name is spreading, and people are even coming from Jerusalem up to see what he's about and maybe bring them healing that they need. But in this moment, he chooses to sit down with his 12 disciples and teach them. Now, there will be a periphery around that will also hear. But this is principally for the disciples. And if it was for those 12, then it's for us. Anyone who says they are a disciple of Christ, anyone who calls on the name of the Lord, it is for them. And we've seen that the aim of this is so that the disciples can stand out in the crowd, not to blend in, but to stand out for the right reasons, to be salt and light, to make a difference, to be people of the kingdom, living and working and being together in a way that makes plain the character of the God that they worship. And so we have heard that they have to be even better than the Pharisees. God calls them to a greater righteousness than even the scribes and the Pharisees. If you want to be the people of the Beatitudes, then you need to be living the life of the discipleship that Jesus is outlining. And it's a hard word. Last week we heard, blessed, you have heard that it was said. In other words, to the disciples, you've been taught. You've heard in synagogues, you've heard from the Pharisees, you've heard from the teachers of the law. You have heard that it had been said, you shall not murder. A direct quote from the Ten Commandments. You shall not murder. But I tell you, anyone who even murders someone in their hearts, or calls them a fool, or belittles, or ridicules, is destroying who that person is, made in the image of God, and you will be judged for it. And now there are two more of the 6 illustrations of what Jesus means by a greater righteousness. And so today we're coming on to these 2. You have heard that it was said. And the second is, you shall not commit adultery. Again, one of the 10 commandments. You have heard that it was said, but I tell you. So he's taking the direct action that's in the 10 commandments, which people went, well, I've never slept with another woman, or I've never slept with another man, I've never committed adultery. Just like murder, I've never murdered one, I'm a righteous person. And he says, hang on a minute, let's dig just a little deeper. Let's just scratch the surface and see what we find. But I tell you, anyone, no get out of jail free card there, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Now, can I just say, what Jesus isn't saying is anyone who admires another woman. Anyone who is going along and going out to the pub or a club or restaurant, going out with friends in the hope of meeting someone and going, oh, they're a cracker. I think, oh. You know what it's like? You lock eyes with someone across a dark room. No. But think back to when perhaps you were, nice old-fashioned phrase, courting, and you're invited and you're meeting with somebody, and you go there with friends and you see somebody. Perhaps you've come in. This happened in a previous church. We were up in Cop Road in Hull, and there were a lovely old couple there. He was a headmaster, she was a nurse, and she'd come up from Wales to train, and he was training to go into the teaching. And they both sat in the holiest seats in the church, which of course is the back row, so bless you. I thought it was the cinema, but no, this was the church. And they met that's where they met. For the first time. She'd come up from Wales, was doing a nurse training, and the church opposite to the university was Cot Road, and she went to church that Sunday, and the rest, you could say, was history. And I bet they locked eyes at each other, and I bet he went, oh, she's something. And she went, he's quite smart, isn't he? Anyway, they got married, had children, a beautiful couple. Sadly, both have now passed away, but beautiful couple. That's not what Jesus is saying. What Jesus is saying is someone deliberately looking at someone who is already married That's what it says in the text. Already married, and regardless of the fact they're already married, has no regard for their union before God, and is looking at, in one sense it's a fantasy, but if that fantasy became a reality, it would be destructive within the marriage of that person would then be breaking up. And that's what Jesus is castigating. Of course, the prime example of this in Scripture can be found in 2 Samuel 11. Listen to this. One evening, King David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman washing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." The year had started. War was being waged on the periphery of David's kingdom with the Amorites. And the army of Israel had gone out and besieged Rabbah. And they ended up destroying the Amorites. But David, we're told, remained in Jerusalem. David was the head of the army. He should have been there. That was his duty. But instead, he reneged on his duty, delegated responsibility, and was loafing around in Jerusalem. Now, you know what happens? Idle hands cause. He was loafing around, and one day he goes up onto the roof, and he sees Bathsheba bathing after her period, cleansing. If he was a righteous man at that moment, he would have closed his eyes, turned around, and gone back down. If he was a righteous man, he should not have been in Jerusalem. But he was in Jerusalem. He was in the palace, and he was looking out over Jerusalem, and he sees Bathsheba. He has a choice now. What's he going to do? And the text, and Nathan later castigates him because he allowed his lust to grow. He allows himself to go, And it grew. And so he finds out who she is and the fact that her husband is away, fighting the war that he should be leading. An honorable man. But she is alone. And so he sends a servant to get her. Now, I don't believe Bathsheba went willingly. The king sends a proclamation that she should come to the court. At that point, she had no choice. He is the king, God's representative, representing the rule of God and the righteousness of God, the authority of God in that place, alongside the priesthood. She had no choice. David effectively did what Jesus says you should not do, but took it to the next degree. He looked lustfully upon this woman and therefore forced her into his presence, committing adultery, not just in his heart, but it went to reality. With David, it then went further. He tried to cover up his error. Everything would have been fine if Bathsheba hadn't actually got pregnant. It's all her fault, obviously. But now there's a child. Whose child is it? It can't be Uriah's. He's been in the battlefield. So he calls Uriah home and says, You've been doing a lot of great work. It's stressful on the battlefront. Go and enjoy your wife. But he says, no, I know my responsibility. I am on the battlefield. I've been on the battlefield. You know what happens on the battlefield. I'm ceremonially unclean. I can't now just turn my back from that just for... And he says no. And says no. And says no. And David arranges for Uriah to be placed in the heat of the battle. And then when the battle's at its highest, he tells the people around him to withdraw, exposing Uriah to the enemy completely, and he is killed. And then he marries Bathsheba. Phew, got away with it. Not with God. Not with God. And so Jesus is saying, how are you relating to other people? Are other people just commodities to use, to do with as you please, to satisfy your own cravings? Or will you honor what you see before you? Will you honor that and honor what God has joined together? And so he gives a story, examples, typical rabbinic example going way over the top to make a point. He says this, if your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into Gehenna. If your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. So we're going to put a cleaver on the top of that control box. So, no. So if to prevent you from stumbling and turning the heating off and causing great discomfort and pain to other people. No. Now, obviously, Jesus is not saying, if you have a problem with pornography, if you have a problem with lust, if you have a problem where you just see other people are there for your own ends, pull your eyes out. Chop your hand off. Mark's gospel has 3. He starts with the hand. In other words, if anything you do with your, causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your feet, if anywhere you go causes you to stumble, cut it off. If your eyes, is the 3rd one in Mark, causes you to stumble, gouge them out. I think in Matthew's gospel, Matthew puts eye first just to highlight what he's been saying about seeing and lusting after and craving after. But he says, it is better for you to lose a part of your body than to lose all of your body and soul. Because ultimately, he says, being thrown into Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, it was, as you remember from last week, that place where the Israelites sacrificed their children to Molech, to the demonic forces, if you like, of this world. And Jesus is saying the very place where ultimately the demonic force is going to be judged and thrown into the eternal fire, you will be joining them if you're not careful. So it is better to maim yourself. It is better to have a little bit of self-control than lose your whole life, your whole eternal existence. Don't let this grab hold of you. And so he's turning. You have heard it said, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, Exodus says, Deuteronomy says, do not commit adultery. But don't even start going there, is what Jesus is saying. Don't even start going there. And if you do feel yourself going there, stop. Or as Mark would say, if what you're doing or planning is going to cause this problem, this stumble. In fact, stumble, the underlying word isn't really stumble, it's scandalon. It's where we get the word scandal from. So he's basically saying, if this scandal causes just one person, if your behavior causes just one person, stop it. Stop it. If viewing unhelpful material is causing and creating an environment in your head and in your life that is unhealthy, stop looking at it. Cease, desist. I just find it horrific that the most viewed online material in this country is pornography. And I can't remember the exact figure, but it was in the 70s. I think it was something like 76 or 78% of all teenagers have seen violent pornography. The majority of all teenagers in this country have viewed violent pornography. What's that doing to a mindset, to an understanding of relationships and healthy sex and healthy relationships, rather than just, as Jesus was saying here, grabbing after something for your own gratification, not caring about the damage you are causing? Oh, I believe phones should be banned from schools. I'd go further. I'd ban all phones from anyone who's a minor. The damage we're doing in this culture and society is horrific. We're sleepwalking into something quite terrible. And so he moves on to another illustration. You have heard it said. Now, I want to, we haven't got time to go through what the Bible teaches about marriage and divorce. It's quite nuanced. And what is actually being said here. If you're I have heard this text from Matthew 5:32 used to keep women, it's usually women, in a highly abusive marriage. Go back to your husband. That is your duty. The rest of the New Testament would say, no, it is not. But that's not what's being said here. For one thing, the letter of divorce refers back to the Old Testament. And it refers back to Deuteronomy 24. And it refers back to Moses granting the people of Israel the possibility of divorce because of their hard-heartedness. And note this, only men could have a divorce. Only men. Women of this period lived under the authority of their fathers and in their father's house. And when they got married, lived under the authority of their husband's house. They did not have the option of divorce. It was only for men. And at the time of Christ, there was a debate raging, principally because of two schools of thought. There was the great Rabbi Shammai and Hillel. And Shammai and Hillel looked at Deuteronomy 24 and came to quite different conclusions. Shammai held that something indecent, recorded in Deuteronomy 24:1, meant marital unfaithfulness, where someone has, going back before, the marriage bond has been broken. What God said, two shall be made one, has been fundamentally broken because of marital unfaithfulness. And that how can the marriage go on in that way? But no other clause. Whereas Hillel says, well, who becomes displeasing to him? So he ignored the first part and went to the second part. And it got to the point where people were being divorced because the wife burnt their cooking. We have recorded in the Mishnah, the Jewish records, court reasons why it would be appropriate. I just don't like her anymore. She's ugly now. I prefer this one. I prefer this model. So I don't like you anymore. I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. Go to a scribe, get a certificate of divorce, and I can give it, sorry about this, Ruth, but I can give it to you, give it to my wife. And the certificate of divorce says you are now free to marry somebody else. That's what it says on it. And that was her ability to then have another husband. And in that culture, not having another husband, not having the protection of their household, that shelter, the earning, material wealth coming into that place, she had one of two options, effectively. Go back to her father's household or struggle on her own, which usually meant finding a means of self-supporting herself. And in that culture, that only really meant one thing. You can work out the rest. Jesus, in this text, is coming down hard on the side of Shammai and saying, just because you're having a rough time in your marriage doesn't mean you can get divorced. Just because, you've seen a better option, in inverted commas. You think they can throw away consumerist society as something new? People treating their spouses as if it's just a commodity as long as they're pleasing to me, as long as I'm getting something from it. No, it goes way, way back. And it goes way, way back for one very simple reason. Sin. That attitude that puts me at the center of my universe. And as long as everyone else is circling around me, that's okay. But marriage says no. There's no longer me, there's us. And that's a new entity forged by God. And so it's saying, and I always use it in a marriage show, and you'll find out. I say, will you take this person to be your lawfully wedded husband, wife? Not do you. Do you says, I'm okay about it in the moment. I'm happy with that arrangement today. Tomorrow? It depends if she burns the toast or not. Will you is present continuous. Yes, I will. For as long as this union is bound together by God, I will. Not if I feel like it, I will. And that's what Jesus is doing. He's pointing everyone straight back, not to reasons for divorce, but he's pointing everyone straight back to what God intended in marriage in the first place. So instead of going around thinking of reasons and validations for why you might get a divorce, think of reasons why this union could be repaired. Think of reasons why my own attitude might be such that I don't want to be with this person anymore. Now, as I said at the beginning, there might be very good reasons. If you're at the end of a husband who has been battering you, get out. Don't let this stop you. Get out. If you're in a relationship where love has died and it's abusive, get out. But if all you're doing is thinking, I'm a bit bored with this model. Trouble is, when you live together with someone for quite a considerable time, you get to know them, all their joys and all their foibles, and we start taking each other for granted. And when we start doing that, we can suddenly see some new excitement over here. And Jesus is saying, don't you dare. If you're going to start going down that road, gouge your eye out. Go back. Rekindle that first love within your own marriage that God himself has honoured and blessed. And then we'll have relationships that are honouring, positive, a blessing. And I would extend that out further. How many of us have friends, in inverted commas, proper, not online ones, proper friends? You're talking about your village, the people that you have around you, your community. You'll go the extra mile for them. You'll bless them. You'll want them to thrive and flourish. So when we're looking at it within to our relationships, can we have the righteousness and the mindset of Christ that wants each other to flourish, and not that mindset that wants to grab and seek and onto what is best for me and what I want and what will gratify me in this moment, but instead turn it round. How can I help this community flourish and grow and be a place of nurture where marriages can thrive, where relationships can thrive, and peace can reign? Surely that's a place we want here. That's a place we want to be, a people we want to be. People who have a greater righteousness than those who just follow a doctrine or a decree and feel smug when they have never murdered anyone. Amen.